In any reasonable, sophisticated setting, a bit of literate hostility and sarcasm can always pass for intelligence. It cannot, however, in the mind of a more perceptive man. On this one planet, every 1,000 years or so, the thinking creatures are given their choice anew, to either be forgiven for their sins or be forgiven for being thinking creatures. The speaker said, "A man with no clock is never late," and someone responded, "But he can be to those who do have one," and the speaker replied, "Yes, but I'm not actually talking about time now, am I?" Some important facts that are useful and helpful. Being grumpy will cause you to stare. Staring will cause you to be grumpy. Staring will make you feel hostile and critical. Being critical will make you feel grumpy and cause you to stare. The usefulness of the facts are somewhere in there. Those interested in space travel enjoy nothing better than discussing the possibility, which is understandable, but it is still just talk and not an actual change in residency. "Daddy's sage?" asked the young mystical son. "Is this intended to rattle me and give me the blues?" "No, my boy, contraire. A less fettered mind would find such elaborations neither positive nor negative, neither encouraging nor discouraging, neither supportive nor critical, but informative and useful, as is all expressions of the human mind." Definitions. Talk, what you do until you can act. Dream, what you do until you can awaken. Exist, what you do until you can live. In the hands of the mind, sex becomes love, eating becomes dining, refuge becomes residency, and God knows what else. Without the mind, no confinement. Without the mind, no escape. Without the mind, no nightmares. And without the mind, no possibility to awaken from the dreams. And the human mind mused. "I continue at a loss to understand why men so pick on me. What could be fairer than that just noted? Some men are sore losers. Some men somehow quit playing meaningless sports." A kid inquired of his elder sibling, "Say, what's the problem with having fun at somebody else's expense anyway, since life does it at ours?" And just then, Joe Bob from down the street came by and stabbed them both in the clavicle. If you believe that you are objective and yet with a certain edge to your impartiality, then be aware that you are not truly without prejudice. Compared to the mind, further distinctions using the art of authorship as the metaphor. Compared to the mind, consciousness is like a writer who employs no research material. Or perhaps you'd care for it in a musical context. Thinking, a practiced performance, evolved consciousness, prima vista, sight reading. Okay, one more as long as we're already here. Since the mind knows where it's going, it cares if it doesn't get there. Get it? One cow, who would be alpha wolf, urgently exhorted neighboring bovines, quoting, "'Tis harder to drown a herd than it is a single cow." And many of them did immediately begin to gather around him. And before long, they had indeed made him pope, crowned him king, and printed up baseball cards with his picture. Those who still believe that they are individually smarter than the collective, that is, civilization, or in truth even dumber than the dumbest they can imagine. In case you missed it again, this is all involved with quite basic mechanics life employs as a means of self-protection. That, and plus it keeps the dumber of the dumb off the scent. A certain man mused, "There is no doubt that in a certain manner, he who endures conquers, Then he looked at his everyday life-induced thinking and said, well, old chum, it's either you or me. The sage said, it is extremely difficult to talk about man without being critical of man, which is why I command the big bucks that I do. Hormonal-driven behavior no longer totally acceptable in a civilized milieu will be objectified and turned into a vague, pronoun-based external foe. Man's literary motivations mowed under. Feeling a need to either moan or rhapsodize about life is proof enough one is not fully experiencing life. And a cultured viewer inquires, as regards the just read item, could you be a bit more specific? Yes, indeed, to wit. Around these here parts, poets are chumps. One of the captious corners of routine mystical traditions and practices is that, by their very pursuit, they not only imply that man has problems, but that they are ultimately solvable. Wrong on both counts. After developing a pretty good idea of what human life and the upper end of man's nervous system was about on this planet, whenever his mind would try and make him passively think and accept whatever had happened to pass through him, this one guy would respond by saying, I don't do predictions. I do not know whether you immediately understand this, and I do not know if his mind understood this, but I do know that he did. And it made all the difference necessary. Since at the intellectual level men do not know what they're doing, they like to put other men in charge of knowing. Often referred to simply as civilization. Anger in a man denotes two things, that he is alive and that he is inferior. Do note that anger is just a word. The concept of overdoing it, such as setting your head ablaze on a bad hair day and taking chapped lips as an invitation to drink paint thinner, can be seen as also tied to the nightly notion of dragons not being for the sake of slaying, but for riding. At the radical level, the human mind is critical for reasons quite physical and mundane, which have nothing to do with qualitative judgments of human behavior. The mind is basically critical so as to reproduce itself and to promote complexity in life via science and technology, which are not possible without mental discrimination. But its fault-finding scope into human affairs is of a much later date and somewhat of an add-on operation. Adage update. The sins of the fathers are the excuses of the sons. And oh yeah, it might behoove you to remember that life is everyone's original old man. Time does not run from the winding of clocks, but from the edginess of the human mind. A correspondent privately inquires, from what I can tell, based on what you've laid out, I do see that few people know. My question now is life aware that a few do know? In the attempt to help his son better grasp the futility and foolishness of criticizing everyday human nature, which is the proper nature of everyday humans, a father so reminded the boy, peopling is the primary activity of people. And now, distinction number, hell, I've lost count. The voices of the mind, critical and qualitative, of consciousness, new. Men collectively established the positions of king, priest, and other assorted leaders just so, on their applications, they wouldn't have to put down that they were ruled by chance. In fact, if you like a new definition, civilization, the physical assault on and denial of the power of happenstance. Daddy, is this what separates man from the other beast? Well, son, that and a lot of other trivialities. Oh, Dad, you're just joshing me now. Yes, son, I guess I am. Well, I guess I better be. The human intellect is likened to the law's court of chancery in that, to paraphrase its basic maxim of equity, it suffers no question to go unanswered. Perhaps someday I'll explain that one, and perhaps not. It might be easier for you people to go to law school at night and find out for yourself. Memory implies hostility. That's why thought has a front and back end. The oft-repeated cry went out anew in one human collective setting. We shall all hang together, or we shall surely all hang separately. And one man who had of late begun to perceive life in an unusual manner thought to himself, why do we not simply kill the hangman? Hint, the above story has more to do with mental notions of problems, solutions, questions, answers, and guilt than it does with physical executions. The eloquence of grief, tears. Of stupidity, speech. Kind of makes it hard to carry on and talk, doesn't it? No, not a bit, not a bit. So that's my imitation of a nice, sane person. Well, having said that, I bet now you're ashamed to even say anything, aren't you? Well, hell no. In case you didn't think I was a regular kind of guy. Stupid as the next man. One man who believed that his thoughts came either from his mind or his body was startled when he heard it said that they came from his molecules. There are things that will kill you before death, but ordinary minds know not what they are. That's why they're all the time guessing. In the routine world, all statements of fact are in fact questions. Daddy, when he says routine world, does he mean the intellectual world? I think so, son. What could be more routine than that? Gee, Dad, you really sucked it to me on that one. Ha ha. The true beauty of thought is in thinking about how things are, not about how men say they should be. Another one for the campfire, Ringo. As long as man believes that his mind finds solutions, he will have problems. What do you think, Gabby? Should we let Roy answer that one or lay it next to Trigger's statue? One man thought, if there is some alternative reality, some anti-universe running in the opposite direction of our own, then it has to be just on the other side of my own neural patterns. Query, who the larger fool? Those who take the life of man seriously or those who criticize those who do? A fellow told a friend, from a more expansive view, there's no such thing as wrong thinking, only thinking that has too much of the pre-verbal aggressive edge still to it. How you can tell and not tell. A greater sense of consciousness implies nothing. Definition. Ordinary thought. The reality police.
Yeah.
You don't see many stuffed horses that can still count. To himself, one man finally thought, no matter what anybody else says, never again will I ever eat anything that I don't like. And his self thought, it will certainly be nice if this includes more than just food. Note, everyone has two selves. You have yourself and you have your self-self. A man told some listeners, I will now relate to you the mother of all myths and legends. Once, from how it appears now, everyone knew a certain secret. Most people forgot it, some didn't. The end. The knock on his door was followed by the identifying announcement, modification, and the man replied, please enter. Modifications are always welcome. The late night knock on his door was followed by the announcement, modulation. And the man replied, do come in. Modulations are always in order. The early morning knock on his door was followed by a silent voice announcing deep alterations, to which the man sighed aloud, ah, at last. Well, since the last time that we were all standing here together, and I had written some items and was speaking about, I know on the surface it seemed to be rather cold-blooded notations of the futility, ultimately, of all sorts of practices and methods to try and do something extraordinary with one's hand. No, that was just a gesture. Well, you do recall, and those of you who don't, that whatever this sort of activity is about, whatever it was called, has to do with people wanting to know something extraordinary, calling it by all sorts of names. Oftentimes they start off, and if they never get any further, they stay at a childish level of thinking it has something to do with behavior. Such as, I wish I could change my habits, which I know I did it in a passing blow last time, but that's nothing. That is just absolutely nothing. But notice the important place it plays in a contemporary person's life. The more sophisticated, the more educated they are, the greater importance it seems to be. That is, of changing one's habits. You know, don't eat so much. Don't eat sugar. Don't smoke. Don't drink. Don't take drugs. Don't abuse your children. Don't let your children abuse you. And it's all based upon behavior. And it seems extremely important. But there is also a very potent position taken in human life that is normally given too short shrift, if any notice at all, and that is busy work. Yeah. Which I know I can make it sound humorous, which it already did to some of you. Obviously people suffering from damn near terminal ennui. Well, I was going to say more, but damn, that's boring. Anyway, it is easy to attack busy work, all the way from pork barreling in politics to, well, there was a great one, some of you were born right when it was happening, the moving of the capital of Brazil comes to mind from Rio, you know, whatever it is, 500 miles inland, a brand new city, Brasilia, for absolutely no reason whatsoever. By many people's views. Well, those who were not in power at the time and those who do not had, those who are not part of the pork barreling. But they're endless. You know that. But I was going to point out many of the aspects of contemporary life, of people who believe that they are seriously involved with trying to improve themselves, it is nothing but busy work. Of course, the ultimate busy work, if you want to see it, is a man's personality. I tried my best not to say that tonight, but it slipped out. In fact, I plan this weekend, I'm going to undertake a strict regimen myself to try and control my tongue and not say things I know I shouldn't say. And if that don't work, I'll go back to drinking. Because I can stop that, I assume. Again. This week. Notice it is in a real sense busy work, but it is something to do while you're waiting for death. I'm sorry, till you're waiting for something to happen in life. You walk in any bus station on this planet, and I don't care whether they've got the Star of David up, a Christian cross. I don't care if the diplomas on the wall saying PhDs and psychology and psychiatry. They're bus stations. That's not to attack them. I'm just putting them all together in their right perspective. But in all bus stations, if you notice, people are sitting out working crossword puzzles, playing chess, picking their teeth, going to the bathroom a lot, snoozing. You got to do something while you're waiting on death. The bus. So everyone seeks a form of entertainment intellectually. Hormonally, as I sometimes neural, as I sometimes refer to it. But if you notice what they end up doing, even those who believe that they're involved in something extraordinary, such as mystical activities of all stripes and shapes, or religious activities, what do they end up doing? End up's a figure of speech because they start out doing it, but they end up doing it. That is, engaged in activities of a behavioral nature. It is one of these aspects of life that is, again, point blank. It's just unavoidable. And somehow everybody avoids it. As you say, well, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to be a better person. I am trying my best. Well, exactly what are you doing? Right now, I'm in a 12-step program to get off of drugs. Now, I have been more or less, I quit going for a while, 2 years ago when I started, and I know I quit for a while, but now I've been going now, what is it, dear? But nearly 5 months, and I've only missed 2 or 3 meetings. All of that sounds fine. But when I say busy work, do you understand that that's people who are not even in the bus station? To say that you're trying to, and now I know that it sounds again as some form of theatrical sarcasm, but that's all it is. It's theatrical. But to believe that you're in some way going to improve yourself spiritually, mentally, consciously, by doing that, which should be the bare minimum to be alive, it's a physical level. In other words, a man says, well, I have finally decided what I was put on this planet for is to expand myself spiritually, emotionally, creatively. But the first thing I've got to do, there's no doubt, I have got to get off of drugs, and I'm working on it. At least we'll just stay here and spin our little Greyhound wheels all night. Let me just put it to you point blank. I mean, you should already know it, but anyone who has a problem putting the brakes on physical suicide, no matter how gradual, anyone involved with that is not even up to ordinary speed. They're not even in the back row of the dumbass class with the rest of us, or you. If that is the best you can do, which is all right in life, if that's the best you can do, you're absolutely going nowhere. To say that I am trying to improve myself spiritually, I am trying to expand my consciousness, and I'm going to show you how serious I am. I have normally been killing myself a little bit every day by drinking or smoking or taking drugs, having a horrible temper to the point that the police they just see me coming and they'll just slap me aside the head with something. But I'm working on that. Do you want to think about it a second? Now, at least that sounds like an exaggeration. Consider what all religion is. You walk in the door, you may be a teetotaler, a non-smoker, you may already be a vegetarian, you may think, I'm doing everything. I do not beat my children, I'm not overweight, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I just go in. But if you're going to stay there, what's the first thing they're going to do for you to join up with this herd? They're going to make you, figure of speech, feel guilty. They will bring it out in that creative way that religion and other human institutions, they'll bring it out and they say, how did you get here? Well, I just heard about you and I heard that your church, your religion, your cult has something great to teach. Could be, but what's your main problem in life? Well, I don't have any real problems. I'm pretty straight. People like you are the worst kind. Deluded. I mean, you think you're something. You're not on drugs or anything. Well, no. You look like you're in good shape. Well, yes. You don't have any real harsh or nasty personal psychological habits. No. So you think that's it, huh? Yeah. But then you're getting to feel, well, so you want to do something extraordinary in your life? Well, I thought I did. Well, you really think you're something, don't you? Just come in here and say, well, I don't have any problems. I'm a fine person. Well, if you're a fine person, go do it on your own. And you go, well, I didn't mean anything. I didn't mean any offense. That's the only thing that holds a person to apparent organized systems of attempted self-expansion. So you have got to feel that something's wrong. But it's always on the basis that whatever it is that's wrong, even if we're not going to put a good, clear name on it yet, they tell you, the first thing we're going to do is work on it. And what do they work on? Behavior. They work on the body. They work on that which is driven by hormones, and that is not what the problem is. That is not what the possibility is. That is not what is under consideration. And as far as verbally, we're back to the cats being able to say one thing and do something else as always. It's them to say, well, what we're here for, well, all churches do. They say, well, our purpose is for the human spirit, or for the human mind, they should be saying. And you say, well, what can you do for me? And they say, all right, we've got things that will really help. Well, put it on me. All right, don't eat meat. Okay. And don't have sex on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay. And don't drink or smoke or take drugs. Okay. And they go, well, that's it. Do you understand what busy work that is? There is, however, within all of it, I was trying to make up for leaving, I know some people feeling as though they could have been in a lurch, having nothing to do with TV programs from last time. When I was pointing out that no matter what attempt, no matter what practice, no matter what system, exercise a person tries, their greatest ally, or one of the two greatest allies, is luck. Ordinary people then would respond, if they had followed from last time into tonight, they would respond that, I'll speak for them, well, what you're calling busy work is the exact kind of proper preparation a person needs to avail themselves of luck should it arise. Back to the story that it always seems to be he who is best prepared, he who has paid his dues, he who has prepared himself mentally, physically, and every other way, educationally, for the opportunity, is he who can avail himself, who can spot it, who can be selected by chance and fate when they pass his way. It just sounds undeniable. Other than this, it's busy work. It's there everyone stands in Rio, circa, whatever it was, 1955. Everybody in Rio thinks, God, I wish I was more conscious. And suddenly, coming off the beaches of Ipanema, seems to be this spirit, not that statue up on Sugarloaf doing that. That's a later thing. It's in the other direction, coming out from the ocean. It's like a sound. This would get inside that baseball movie, but the sound that says, move the capital inland. And the 7 or 8 million people, as I'm guessing it was about that time, went, but what we want is an expansion of our consciousness, our understanding. And the voice says, I know. Move the capital way, way inland into areas now nothing but forest. Took them 20 years. Nobody wants to go there. They spent more money than was the per capita income of that country, I'm sure, for the 20 years. But what else are they going to do? What else are you going to do, which is fairly indirect, but I can make it sound direct as much as it has already with ordinary people, because all of the religions, colloquial sense, adages, maxims, aphorisms, fables, epithets are replete with this information. So much so that it almost makes a cliche sound fresh and surprising. And it has to do with, I threw it in a stack of them tonight, it has to do with a kind of edginess. It has to do with, I have normally been referring to it in a good common way, is hostility, aggression, a kind of anger. But it is a kind of edginess that passes, and I don't mean just between people, it always passes between people. It's one of the items tonight that under any civilized setting, a kind of literate sarcasm, hostility, can always pass for insight. It can pass for intelligence. Everyone knows that. It's not an attack. The wittiest people at cocktail parties, the wittiest guests on talk shows, are those with a certain sneer. Now, you've got to be literate in this day and time. You can't be just some carpet layer from Biloxi. You're just kind of drunk and pissed because you can't make over about the best you've ever done is $7,000 a year. They're not going to invite you on some important talk show just for you to go, life's unfair. No. Screw the rich. Well, you know that won't do. But you can get someone there who seems to have a certain glibness, can call upon certain literary allusions and allegories, and they can say, screw the rich, but it comes out in another way. It could be surprising, and some of the guests go, ooh, oh. They'll bring out and twist around some reference to a Greek epic. They'll take something that Confucius said, and they'll turn it into an anachronistic observation vis-a-vis contemporary political times. And ooh. And they're still saying, screw everybody, screw the rich, screw everybody but me. There is a continual edginess inside of one's mind. The only reason I'm changing the term tonight is because I'm changing the term. Instead of just saying hostility, which is pretty much of a cannon blast, pretty wide spread, I would like for you to notice within yourself, and this has nothing to do to relieve any of you except those of you who would like to move your capital just 500 miles inland for no reason whatsoever, then go ahead. But for those of you exempt from such busy work, I would point out to you that the edginess of one's mind is not caused by one's background, one's childhood, one's environment. May I condense time and say, put it to you directly. It is not caused by anything other than being alive. It is caused by the cats It is not caused by your psychological makeup, because your psychological makeup are simply feathers that your cats are beginning to hold up behind their head and trying to go tweet, tweet. And of course, the better you are at it, the more chance is that you will be invited on a show, because they're not going to invite the carpet layer from Biloxi. He is still a cat, and there's no hiding it. But under the right conditions, the man can graduate from something other than a agricultural state night school, get a good hairdo, a nice suit, and they'll set him on the panel, and he'll hold up feathers. And he will try his best to look like he has a bill. But it's still the cat doing it. There is an edginess. I'm trying to get you to refine it in your own perception. There is an edginess, and it is what I mean by the continual bringing up of criticism. There is an edginess that is a discrimination that for all ordinary purposes is absolutely necessary to live an upright, routine, mundane, sane life. One of the items in there that I probably pulled out, but see if I can quote myself, that there is what seems to be the critical nature of man. And remember, the critical nature is here, and that's where it manifests itself. The other critical nature, the basis of it, the cat basis of criticism, is taken into no account in any terms other than the most crude, which is at the judicial level, criminal behavior. But that's of no great interest the more civilized you are. I mean, it's of interest you want them put away, but it's not of interest that's not a civilized man's problem. I'm not going out and kill someone. I'm simply not. So there is, but the critical basis, although it appears to manifest itself here to ordinary, civilized, sophisticated people, that is the criticism that is open to change, that is open to remedial action, that is open to a correction in course with other people, are intellectual activities, not behavioral activities. Behavioral missteps, as I said, we try to put them away. I mean, what good is it going to do if somebody kills his mother and father? They don't stand there in court, unless the judge is crazy as he is, and when they sentence him, give him some kind of big lecture and go, oh, shame on you. Or the jury, they don't say, well, all right, if you find him guilty, let's everybody have a shot at him. They let every juror stand up, or people there in the gallery stand up and go, oh, boo to you. You know, shame on you, terrible person you. Let me tell you how much I despise you. You don't do that. You just say you've reached a verdict, and they say, yes, we have. What is it? We find him guilty of murder in the first degree, and the judge says, well, so be it. And I sentence you to die next Tuesday. Court dismissed. And he turns around and he goes to dinner. That's it. Well, you understand, there is nothing when you get to that crude level, and when you're still there, there is no real critical operations manifest. The critical operation is a return, is society, the collective of the herd, retaliating in like. When it's that crude, when a cat has eaten his mother and father, then the other cats simply, condemn him, go skin him. Wrap him up and sell him his violin strings. Yeah. The critical faculties, the critical operations of which I refer to and everyone else does, appear to be up here. And they appear to be, by all common consent, open to change. Because ordinary people would say, well, hey, state the obvious. Because they would say, well, why else would a sane person such as moi, why would I criticize someone else unless I thought there was some chance of change? Why do I sit here at our discussion group? Why do I sit here driving in the carpool every morning and I talk about the horrible way in which the Muslims are being treated in the erstwhile Yugoslavia and that certain unpleasantness going on in Bosnia? I know that I'm one man, I can't do anything about it, but there's some other people in the car. Charlie rides with us. He keeps insisting, he keeps trying to bring out, I didn't know he knew that much about history, but he keeps trying to bring out how the Serbs were so repressed under Tito and how it's now just kind of a natural reaction, although he says he doesn't he cannot in any way accept the kinds of atrocities that are reported to be going on the service part. He wants to say that the service should be given, blah, blah. At any rate, and the man says, the only reason I will even talk to Charlie and bring this up, I know I can't stop the fighting, but if I can show somebody else in life where they are misled, where they're mistaken, and where their allegiances lies, where they are misreading history and current events, I am doing some good in life. It's like, I know I can't move the capital by myself, but I can pick up one stone right here in Rio, and I can walk over there to where they going to call it? But say, yeah, I can carry one stone over there, and by God, do my share. I guess if I had any decency, I'd apologize for doing that right in the middle of talking about something else, wouldn't I? The critical facilities, the critical operations of man are here. That is where everyone sees them, whether I know they don't analyze it in that way, but that is where they operate. There is a basis for it, and it is not psychological. It is not something that has happened. It is not a mistake in the development of human consciousness. The critical facilities have a quite physical, mundane basis. The first one is, which I'm not going into because it's one of these things you ought to think about. It is critical, that is, it finds fault. It engages in partisan thought, all forms of opinion. It does this first to reproduce itself. That is the form of intellectual reproduction. I'll leave that one. Then, when it gets to what might appear to be more functional, more visibly functional, is what it does in life, at least on this planet. What it does is it assists, it helps promote complexity. Because if we did not have the human intellect engaged in forms of critical analyzation and criticism of one another and discrimination, life would be no more complex than it was when man began to think. Our society, our life, human life would be no more complex, no more enriched, but no more complex covers it, than a chimpanzee herd, pack. There has to be an increasing complexity of life, regardless of the few other real sorehead critics in life that go, well, it's getting too complex, which is simply for you people who like old vinyl recordings, when pre-echoes, that's a pre-echo of a man dying. That's a pre-echo of the death rattle. Things are not too complex, they're not complex enough. But the critical, the physical basis for the critical aspect, the unavoidable critical core of human thinking is, at a collective level, for the purpose of assisting and promoting complexity in life. And it's not theoretical. In the item I wrote, I even gave you the nice simple example. I just put to promote the increasing complexity in life via science and technology, which are not possible without the discrimination, without mental discrimination. It's simply not. No one would ever invented the wheel, unless they understood, unless they thought critically, unless they thought partisanly. No one would understand the whole idea of inertia, of friction, which the first man didn't, we'll assume, if we're going to play caveman cartoons, didn't even know what the terms were. But you understand, the mind did. It didn't have the terms for the first pulley, the first lever. The mind had to be critical. It had to discriminate between that which seems to be that here we all stand, this big old rock fell on my wife, the one I'm living with, and everybody stand there. A few people tried to pick it up, and they realized, they could look. And even their little cat brains, they realized, damn, that rock that fell on her is bigger than probably all 5 of us standing here. So there they stood. And if it had been cats, apes, men with no intellect, that's how it would have been. We'd have come back 5,000 years later. Of course, she would just be dust and bones, but there she would still lay, and there would still be, figuratively speaking, those still 5 guys, including her lover, her husband, they're outlined, staying there going, well, The complexity of life was somebody's mind, just trust me, went over and got the log, kicked a little smaller stone under next to this one, put the thing under there, put his knee on it, and then probably called another guy and said, and they both, kind of squatted, and they did this, and sure enough, the thing moved. That is science and technology. That is a discrimination of the mind. That is, the mind saw how things are on this planet. Let's say the chimpanzee mind sees how things are. A dog's mind looks around and sees the dog world. And that's it. It stays the dog world. The chimpanzee world of today, the civilization of chimpanzees, is the same as it was 5,000 years ago. Has not changed. Of course, they don't complain, but it hasn't changed. The only way that life can change is there has to be discrimination. There has to be a critical attitude. There has to be a critical faculty at work that makes the creature, and I'm going to go ahead and put the words on it. I'm getting so close, but then you got to jump way beyond the physical. But it has to be able to look at things as they were, like the man look at his, this huge boulder laying on somebody he likes. There has to be a difference between seeing life as it is, which a chimpanzee would. Chimpanzee would look at another chimpanzee that was kid or something, and what do they do? I'm not trying to give us the blues, but all they can do is stand there and look. And they won't even do that long. Life takes care of itself. They just have to turn around and walk off. Life is as it is. For life to become more complex, there must be the critical attitude, and what I was going to go ahead and put the words on, is the human mind must look and see things as they are and go, no, wait a minute, no. Wait, let's get this stick and put a small, here, kick that under the, here, and pretty soon they've developed a lever and they've been able to move something larger than they normally could without, had they not come up with this new piece of technology. That is the basis. It is, when I said it's a quite radical, which I mean in the sense of basic, inescapable, it is the bedrock of the development of man, of the intellect, but it is still down in the cat. It is still down in the hormones. It is physical. What appears to be as far removed from the physical, that is man's mind, ordinary people I still want to fight over, well, the great dichotomous question and struggle and question and debate over, or the great mind/body problem, dilemma. It would appear that the operations of the mind are about as far removed from the operations of the body as is possible in one milieu, in one setting. That a man's mind, how far removed is a man's mind from his sex organs, from his stomach, from his alimentary canal? And of course, religions and all would-be ordinary self-help people, they love to play on that. They don't realize it. Which, what do? If you're going to try to improve up here, that they used to call the spirit and the soul, what do? All right, don't eat meat. Give up sex. Don't go to the bathroom but once a day. They take this up here and they go to the other end and say, there's a way to do it. Quit screwing. Quit having sex and watch what will happen to your mind. Of course, they don't point out you go nuts and your face will break out in terminal acne and all that. I couldn't resist. Knowing how many horny adolescents we have here, which is a nicer way of saying, knowing that some of you hardly ever get laid, but just a guess. Just humor, folks. What it would appear to be as far removed, the human intellect, from the basic physical level of human life, the intellect would seem to be as far removed as the outskirts of the actual universe is to us. And it's not. There is no such dilemma. There is no mind/question. Screw the slash. Except that's the critical faculties at work to go, the great question facing psychology, are all right-thinking, serious, inquisitive people in this day and time is, quote, the mind/body question. And the slash, you understand the way they do it, what it means is, which is in charge? Which is predominant? Which should be predominant? Which has been predominant? Which is the sickest? Which is our salvation? Which is our curse? That is, that there is a difference, a distinction. That's what the slice is. That, right there, that slice, you have a physical example of the critical facilities, the inescapable critical facilities of the human intellect. But it is not an intellectual phenomenon. It did not in some way spring from the intellect. It is as hormonally based as it is one's stomach of the same person being hungry and looking around having your choice of either eating this apple or swallowing this fair-sized rock. That is the kind of critical judgment that now manifests itself here. And it is inescapable because at first it is what makes intellectual reproduction possible. It then serves a greater purpose, that it promotes increasing complexity in life via such things as technology, which I try to get you to see is simply, in one way, the human mind looking at how things are and going, wait a minute, we could do this. That is mechanical progress. That is evolution at that level, at the ordinary level. But then when it gets into the area that is of apparent personal, everyday significance, that is the qualitative judgments that go on regarding human behavior, human nature, all the way from institutionalized, such as religion, psychology, prevailing wisdom, contemporary standards. All of that is now qualitative judgments. And at that level they're supposed to be, that people condemn. Well, right now the Protestants in Northern Ireland are condemning the Catholic attitude there. And the Muslims are condemning the Jewish attitude in Lebanon and here and there. It's all over the world. The man and woman doing the tango here, if they're serious about it, every time he dips her, it's not just a dance move, it's a criticism. And him thinking, boy, what kind of bear grease is she using in her hair? And then when they step back this way, she goes, God, is that the cheesiest mustache you've ever seen in your life? When it gets into that area, see, now we're not talking about technology. They would seem to be two different things. If ordinary people had followed me this far, and they say, well, yeah, I can understand what you mean by the critical facilities, the critical operations of the human mind are absolutely necessary for the ordinary progress of humanity. That the mind sees things as they are, this rock laying on a person, killing them, and the mind goes, wait a minute, if we did, no, and it worked. They would say, yes, I can see that. But they would say there's a world of difference between that and people arguing over political theories, religious ideas. The latter, face it, okay, the latter, to an everyday person's way of thinking, if an everyday person would think about such as this, the latter is of more importance. If you said, what do you think about yourself? Do you go around thinking about how great it is to live in such a technically advanced age and time, age and era, age and place? And they would go, well, no, not a lot. And you say, how much do you think about the way society is deteriorating right here in the midst of all this technological advancement? Which do you think most about how the space program is progressing along our tempo, or how our neighborhoods are being just driven, torn asunder by crime and drugs? The latter. I worry about it a lot. Well, of course they're supposed to, but you understand that is where the critical operations of the human intellect function most fully, most visibly. It's an add-on. Compared to the rest of it, it is, not literally, but compared to the rest of it, it is irrelevant. It is impertinent. It is, for a few people, escapable. I was going to point out that the religions, the so-called mystical traditions, verbally, not their practices, but verbally, their teaching, their ideas, are absolutely full of, dripping with, packed with condemnations of hostility. Don't hate your fellow man. I mean, even if he's hateful, even if he's of the wrong religion, even if he has the wrong attitude, leave it to God, leave it to God, don't hate him. Let God sort it out later. Let God get even with him. Don't hate people. That's the worst thing. The main thing, you got to have a loving heart. You know all the forms that it goes on and on and on. Exhorting people. Be loving. Be charitable. Be compassionate. It is what they're getting at. And it does not have any validity. It has no operational validity over a wide area. What they're getting at is this edginess, this critical facility having to do with humans condemning and judging one another, which is damn near an add-on. It is, for a few people, escapable, which is the only thing, that is the full description of all of the great mystical experiences, or all the great descriptions of the mystical experience, I should say. That is the satori. That is the being more conscious, being more awake, getting in touch with the universe. And they can't describe it after the fact is over, but their best shot is always what? It's always a form of, well, I felt so close to my fellow man. I understood we're all one, et cetera, et cetera. All right, narrow it down, distill it. I wasn't pissed. That's it. I wasn't pissed. There is an edginess. Even people who believe that they're being literate, insightful. It is a people sitting on the talk show. It is a smart-ass cat, just with an ordinary edgy mind, but literate. Good suit, good background. And he can go, da-da-da-da-da. And it passes for something other than what it is. But inside of your mind is it passes for something other than it is. The edginess, it is the dead giveaway. Now, I was going to try to get into how you might actually approach working on it, but I'll be goddamn if we didn't run out of time. Well, until we get to it, good luck. How about it? Now, my best hope for good luck on your part. Is the tape gone? Yeah. No, I was going to try to get to it. Well, it takes an hour of indirect, so I spent an hour working up.